Welcome into the GoVols247 podcast. I'm Patrick Brown. I'm joined by Ryan Callahan. We are sitting in the visiting coaches booth at Neyland Stadium after Tennessee's 42-9 win against New Mexico State on homecoming. We are broadcasting this podcast live on our YouTube channel and on our Twitter or X account, whatever we're calling it these days. It'll always be Twitter to me, but whether you're watching us live or you are listening later, maybe it's Sunday, driving back from Knoxville after this game, we appreciate you. Ryan, Tennessee gets the job done, maybe not quite as emphatic or as quick as maybe ETSU or UAB or a lot of these games in the Josh Heupel era. Tennessee goes out 21-0 in the first half, early second quarter, then kind of sputters on offense. Defense was pretty consistent throughout the first half. It's 21-3 at the break. Tennessee goes and puts the game away in the third quarter with a couple of long touchdown drives. So some injuries, some absences, some things good and bad from this game. Ryan, what is your biggest takeaway from Tennessee winning this game and getting to 7-3 on the season?
Well, yeah, big picture, obviously, it's not ideal to have a game like this, not just because of the style points involved. You know, I'm not thinking about the playoff picture or anything like that, thinking, oh, Tennessee hurt its cause with a 33-point win, or they didn't completely blow out New Mexico State from the start. But to me, this is more about you wasted an opportunity again to get some valuable playing time for some young players, especially at quarterback. George McIntyre and Jake Merklinger each getting a series in this game. And this looked like on the schedule, you know, maybe overlooking New Mexico State a bit to look at it this way, but this looked like a game where you could have gotten Joey Aguilar out of there at halftime or after one drive of the third quarter, and you just weren't able to do that because you had a bad second quarter and didn't completely put the game to bed until really deep into the third quarter. So just not ideal from that standpoint. But like you said, some guys were missing today. You didn't have Josh Josephs or Jordan Ross at the Leo position, so Caleb Herring had to do the heavy lifting there. You had some offensive linemen banged up. That's maybe the biggest negative, and it goes beyond the performance. You had that one drive in the third quarter that they ended up scoring on that ended up being really costly, and that might be the biggest story to take out of this game is you lost some guys to injuries, and we'll see how many of them end up being significant. But Miles Kitselman, that injury did not look good. Peyton Lewis kind of being pushed into his leg as he got down there close to the goal line, and Kitselman, didn't look to be getting around too well after the game. So that to me looks like the type of injury that, without having heard details, will probably at least force him to sit out. You would think that the last game or two here, and we'll see, exactly again what the extent of that is, but it looked like the type of injury that might force him to miss some time. So that's not ideal for sure. So you got some young tight ends behind him that might be forced into more action there, along with Ethan Davis, and we'll see if that's the case. But but on that same drive, Deshaun Bishop and Peyton Lewis both got banged up, along with Wendell Moy Jr.
Bishop did post-game interviews,
so
he's probably fine.
Right. So not all those. That's not to say all those are significant injuries, but because you had to play the starters deeper into this game, you might have gotten at least one or two of them hurt on some level that might at least endanger their availability for the important games you've got coming up at Florida and against Vanderbilt over the next 2 weeks. So just not an ideal night. It's not not the end of the world in some ways, but at the same time, really a missed opportunity, especially for those young guys that could have gotten some more valuable playing time, and especially a guy like George McIntyre that I'm sure a lot of people will be talking about, because he only gets one series and 2 pass attempts in this game. And obviously a lot was made of the fact that he didn't get to play earlier this season against UAB. So you now may end this season with him getting 2 total appearances and one really in which he even threw more than 2 passes. So just not ideal for a guy that most people are going to go into next year viewing as at least the early favorite to beat in that starting quarterback race, whatever it ends up looking like.
Yeah, we'll touch on the injuries and guys that didn't play. First of all, you saw Miles Kitselman after the game with a pretty big brace on his left leg. Again, there's only 2 games left, so anything that's even a few weeks, that's going to sideline you for rest of the season. We'll see about Wendell Moy. It looked like they were looking at his left knee, left leg. They were looking at Peyton Lewis's ankle. I think there were too many guys in the tent, so they had to deal with that on the table, on the training table, on the sideline. So we'll see about that. No Aaron Carter. We talked about his turf toe. Still no Jermon McCoy. Ricky Gibson is out of the sling. No Josephs, no Jordan Ross. Those guys were, I think, banged up against Oklahoma, so probably precautionary. Josh Heupel did say after the game he didn't have an update on Kitselman or Moy, so those guys will get more examination tomorrow. Some guys were held out. He said that they probably could have played if they needed to.
Right.
And then I guess we'll go ahead and get the elephant out of the room here with Boo Carter's absence, not from just not playing in this game, but he was not here at the stadium. And Josh Heupel was asked about this after the game. I'll get his direct quote here. Quote, "At the end of the day, there's a standard you've got to meet to be in that locker room. He was not out on the field with us." And then Heupel added, "That would be my last response to anything related to that for now." So, I mean, it kind of feels like it's heading only in one direction here. There was some talk about there being an injury involved. I think Josh Heupel's answer pretty clearly says that that's not the case. Boo Carter has not been on any injury report throughout the season. So this is a situation that, should have even gotten to this point. I don't want to say too much, but it's like it should maybe have not have gotten to this point. Tennessee maybe should have handled this a little bit differently. But it is what it is. He wasn't here. I will probably be surprised if he plays for Tennessee again. There's only 2 games left anyway. But it seems pretty clear that the fact that he's not even here at all. I mean, guys that are injured, they're all here. They're all in their uniforms for the most part. He's not. So I think that says quite a bit, Ryan.
Yeah. This felt like, again,
is anybody surprised that it's gotten to this point?
Right.
And would anybody be surprised if he plays against Florida? Nothing should surprise anyone with Boo Carter at this point.
Right. I was going to say, this feels like the kind of thing that's been headed this way kind of gradually throughout the season. You didn't know where things were going to come to a head, but clearly trust has been broken, I think, on both sides of this, really since the summer, probably, with everything that happened going into preseason camp. And then the biggest thing that is, I think, kind of caused things to escalate to this point is Boo Carter's lack of buy-in, I guess, and lack of desire to play at a high level. It seems like he's not giving his all for Tennessee, basically.
Well, he had the play against Kentucky where he gives up a touchdown, not great effort there at the end of it, and then he doesn't play on defense at all against Oklahoma, but he returns some punts, and then he doesn't return some punts that maybe he should have. Yeah. Josh Heupel was asked about that during the open day. He said, "Yeah, there's some things we didn't, we should have returned that we didn't." So
he's played like a guy who's been checked out for weeks, and so that's what I think kind of leads to what has happened here over the past 48 hours, where I think there's at least a claim of an injury, as you alluded to. It's been referenced in one report that there was a hip flexor or something. I don't believe that to be a factor. Again, he's not been listed on any injury report. He's not been receiving treatment in the facility, from what I understand. So there's really any claims of that are dubious based on everything we know to this point, and so that certainly suggests that he's kind of trying to check out on this team, maybe, and the things have kind of just come to a head where what's the point in keeping him around for these final 2 games if that's kind of where things are right now. So I'm like you, I'll be surprised if he plays for Tennessee again, but obviously no official word yet from Josh Heupel, and he kind of wanted to leave things there after the game because I don't think anything's been officially determined, but it looks like that's probably where things are headed.
We'll get to the game now. And Tennessee, they were in sort of, I don't say bend but don't break mode on defense. New Mexico State, I think, only had 1 3 and out. They moved the football. I don't know what the final yards were. I have the stats here. I can pull it up. I shouldn't say I don't have the stats.
They threw for more than 300 yards.
Yeah, they threw for 313 yards, only rushed for 27, 8 of 19 on third down, 1 of 5 on fourth down. So, they were moving the football a little bit, but Tennessee was able to, we'll say, play timely defense. New Mexico State gets past midfield on 3 of their first 4 drives. One of those started, I think, at midfield after the interception, but Tennessee's able to get off the field there. Ty Redmond, I thought, was a standout for me. Couple of plays of good coverage on third down early in the game, has the interception that Tennessee turns into a short field for a 14-0 lead. David Hobbs, I think, led the team in tackles. 9 had a couple. I think he got 2 batted passes. He had one on the early fourth down after the first Joey Aguilar interception. That was a good play, and then I think he got a hand on the ball that Redmond intercepted. So Redmond was a standout for me. Hobbs was a standout for me. Jaden Prelati, man, that guy is flying around. When he knows what he's doing and knows where the ball is going, it is kind of, from up top, from where we sit, it's a lot of fun to watch because he closes very, very quickly and with bad intentions. Now, I think there was a play in the first half where I don't know if he thought it was in man or he was just kind of overplaying a guy in his zone, and he left a big opening inside of Colton Hood that led to a conversion. So you're going to get some of that with a freshman that's still kind of learning as he goes at that position. But man, he stands out just about every. He's going to get more playing time over the past few games, and he is, when he's in the game. But we'll start on defense with all the guys missing. They're able to just make some plays. You only give up 9 points. You score on defense. William Wright with the pick 6 in the second half. A great story. He's one of the few 6-year seniors still on this team. That he's one of the few. There's only 3, I think, holdovers from Jeremy Pruitt.
Yeah.
He's one of them. He's a walk-on out of Innsworth. Been a great special teams player this season. It should be mentioned. And just a selfless guy that I think you saw the team celebrate that pick 6 pretty well. That shows you what he's like in this game. And as you touched on, Caleb Herring got a sack. He was playing a lot at Leo. I think Kellen Lindstrom got other run there. They probably used Tyree West and Tyree Weathersby. Marion Dye, they used some of those defensive ends more to sort of overcome that. And then they did what they do a lot of times in these games, and they play everyone. I mean, we saw Caleb Beasley early. All the linebackers were playing. So they played a lot of guys on the field. They gave up some yards in the fourth quarter. You mentioned Mexico State had over 300 yards passing. I think they had almost, we got the stats here. I'll just pull it up. I think it was 130-something in the fourth quarter. So not quite UAB level stat padding, but they threw for 134 in the fourth quarter. So a lot of that in garbage time. But what do you think, Ryan, about how Tennessee played on defense? Was it another step forward after they showed some signs against Oklahoma? Again, the Oklahoma game, the first half was good. The second half, I didn't think was very good.
Yeah.
But it was a step in the right direction. Do you think this was another step in the right direction, or just the product of playing a bad team?
A little bit of both, but I do think because you had some guys out to play this well and to give up a season low 9 points, if you played the team total today, you might have had a tough one on that. Then this extra point, I think it was 9.5 from what I understand. So that's a tough break there. But to give up only 9 points to any FBS team, the way this team has played, and let's face it, they gave up 17 to East Tennessee State at the start of the season. So that's a step in the right direction to me. And they did, shut down the nation's worst rushing offense, at least, allowing only 27 yards on the ground. So they did what they were supposed to do against a team that struggled to run the ball all season. So some positives there. As you said, Ty Redmond, I think that's going to be a lot of people's takeaway from this game. That one-handed interception was a really nice play. We knew that his experience he was gaining throughout the season was going to pay off down the road. And Tennessee obviously feels pretty good about his future, knowing what it's invested in him this season and the opportunities he's gotten. I think you kind of see that showing up in a play like that, obviously. And sure, it's not against an SEC receiver. You're not playing against an SEC quarterback, but that's still a nice play and definitely a confidence booster for a young guy like that who, again, it's taken some lumps. And I think the biggest thing he's shown throughout the year, he obviously has been picked on in some games. Seems like he's got the mental toughness to endure that, though. And that's so important at that position, to be able to turn the page, not let one bad play turn into 2 or 3 bad plays. And he's done a good job, I think, of showing some real emotional maturity out there on the field. So give him a lot of credit for that play. And as you said, Jaden Perlotti, hard not to be impressed with what he's done. And that's, knowing that he's a freshman who probably in some cases is not doing all the right things assignment-wise, but is still just finding ways to show up with his natural ability. So, yeah, it's definitely some things Tennessee can build off of in a game like this. And I think to only give up 9 points coming off the game against Oklahoma makes it seem like Tennessee's maybe, I don't know if they've simplified anything. I don't know if they're doing anything differently in terms of their approach with tackling and things like that, if there's any sort of different approach at all. But the results, for whatever reason, and maybe it is just the competition. Oklahoma doesn't have the most explosive offense either. But whatever it is, they've at least played better, I think, the last couple of games, and that's a step in the right direction going into 2 pretty consequential games here at the end of the season.
Yeah, shout out to the Sooners, first of all, for a nice win today for them. Redmond, Willie Martinez talked about this back in before the season, just how even-keeled and mature this guy is. And, Tim Banks was saying, hey, Tennessee's going to be glad to have this guy down the road here. About Redmond, Josh Heupel said today that, hey, after the game, he's going to be a good player. So, and then Hobbs is another guy. And as you're talking about all these guys, I'm like, all these guys are going to come back next year. And it's like, that's another reason why these games are important here down the stretch is you're about to go into roster management mode where you're going to figure out, like, okay, who do we want to keep? Because, it's free agency, right? I mean, all these guys could potentially leave. So, a guy like David Hobbs, he's going to be wanting to get paid like a starter because the 2 starters in front of him, Bryson Easton and Jackson Moyer, are seniors. So Caleb Herring and Jordan Ross are probably in that boat too, with Joshua Joseph leaving. So Perlotti, all those, all the young talent, throw Edwin Spillman in there. We'll see what Arion Carter does, but these are guys you're going to have to be making roster decisions on here in a few weeks. So that's another reason why these games are important down the stretch, and that's on defense and on offense. But Heupel talked about it too after the game. He was asked about Hobbs and how they really missed him because he said he had an elite offseason. They were really high on him in preseason. You were really high on him, Ryan. I remember that. And he said, not having him, not having Jackson Moy early in the season, certainly impacted Tennessee. Obviously, not having the cornerbacks either, but they need to keep building on it. We'll see what they do against Florida next week. Florida's offense is mistake prone, but they've got some good players over there, and with interim coach, you kind of really never know what you're going to get. I mean, Florida goes out and doesn't even appear to care against Kentucky, and then they're pushing Ole Miss all the way tonight. So we'll see about that. But defensively, again, you make a lot of fourth down stops, you make some turnovers. Probably a good day all in all.
Yeah, and that's another thing, I guess. Give them credit for making some timely stops, but this felt like a game where New Mexico State had a few chances that they kind of let slip away.
Yeah, there was the trick play early on. They had a pass to a tight end that's going to get almost certainly poached in the portal.
Yeah.
Number 2, Gavin Harris. I don't think he did much tonight, but I think that was the only really big play they allowed. And I'm not a guy that's going to go too crazy on what happens in garbage time of these games. That's just not me. But yeah, I mean, they were giving up some short stuff underneath stuff. Colton had a nice play in the end zone on a 6'5" receiver. That's also going to get poached in the portal. Yeah. He's just a freshman.
I like that you're predicting this now, by the way.
Yeah, I watched some highlights of the Mexico State this week. Probably spent more time on the Aggies than I should have, but I like to, I'm a professional if nothing else. But yeah, I mean, you make some nice plays, but and tackling seemed to be better tonight. Yeah. So again, a step in the right direction there for Tennessee's defense.
And all things considered, the fact that you had some guys like Josh Joseph and Jordan Ross out for this game to have that kind of performance, that's a pretty good sign. Arion Carter being out is a big deal for this defense. They obviously were without him for a lot of the Oklahoma game too, and he tried to kind of gut through that one and give them some snaps. But yeah, to be able to play well without him, that's a good sign, because he's obviously important to them in the middle of that defense, not just making plays himself, but getting everyone aligned and making sure they're all in the right places and doing the right things on any given play. So yeah, I think all that's pretty encouraging, and again, just not giving up a ton of points. But yeah, New Mexico State did have some possessions that reached Tennessee territory, and they just didn't end with points. They just stalled just outside field goal range or went for it and didn't get it. So a couple of those drives maybe could have changed the score in this game and made things at least a little more interesting, since Tennessee struggled to pull away for a while. But give Tennessee credit for making some timely stops and holding New Mexico State to single digits.
Switching now to the offense, Ryan, a little bit up and down, and I want to touch on, just get right to it, something that Josh Heupel talked about after the game. He said that there was a day in practice this week that the offense just didn't have an edge, and he used that as a message to the team after the game, saying, hey, you got to invest, you got to put the time in during the week, and if you have a bad week of practice or a bad day, it can show up out here on the game, on the game field, right? What happens behind the scenes, how you work behind the scenes, can also have an impact on what you show everyone that's watching. So some frustration there. Joey Aguilar was very open about how, his mistakes were part of the offense struggling. They come out, they get a couple nice plays on the opening drive. The interception on the throw to Miles Kitzelman floated a little bit. That allowed the defender, who was a defensive end actually, to close on and sort of wrestle that ball away from Kitzelman. They come back with 3 touchdown drives right after that, 2 of them with big plays. They had the 45-yard pass to Chris Brazel where he got behind the cornerback. Safety was a little late getting over. That set up a touchdown. Brazel might have scored on that play, actually. That's a tough one for a guy that's only had, 1 touchdown since his first, since his really hot start to the season in September. But then the second drive after the Ty Redmond interception, Joey Aguilar takes a keeper 27 yards to the end zone. And then the third touchdown was a 99-yard, 13-play, methodical, almost 5-minute drive where Tennessee hit some chunk plays, but nothing too big. I think they only hit 1 or 2 third downs. But it's capped by the Aguilar's touchdown pass to Braylon Staley, who had a nice start to this game. 5 catches for 58 yards for him. There was a play in that sequence where Joey Aguilar looked like he was about to get sacked for sure, and sort of spun out of away from a big defensive tackle and football out to Star Thomas for a nice gain. So they got that touchdown drive. That was Tennessee's first touchdown drive, I believe, since Florida in 2022.
Yeah.
So you go the distance of the field, very nice there. But then the last 3 drives of the first half were kind of crap, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Aguilar throws a pick where he's under duress and it sails on him. They have a 3-and-out where Aguilar had Mike Matthews coming over the middle and either didn't pull the trigger or saw him late. And by the time he saw him, he was running. There was a corner in the flat that you probably couldn't see on TV, but he tries to scramble, doesn't get there. And then they try to get a 2-minute drill after New Mexico State kicked a field goal. And that one would have gotten going, but Star Thomas had a drop where he would have gotten that first down, which means you can go to tempo and start to get going. But they came out in the second half. Joey Aguilar said he was really frustrated going to the halftime locker room, said he prayed, tapped it back into his face, sort of recentered himself, came back out. They led 2 touchdown drives in the third quarter to put the game away. So, offensively, this offense is the kind of game you would probably think they could put up 500, 600 yards, score over 50 points. Really didn't do that. So, is that another step back for this offense? I mean, Josh Heupel said that the interceptions that Aguilar threw, they just have to clean that stuff up. And what do we make of this offensive performance tonight, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it's probably a product of maybe a little bit of rust, a little bit of just human nature, lack of motivation. You're not as fired up and ready going into a game like this as you are as you're going to be at the Swamp next week, even against a Florida team playing with an interim coach, and certainly not against Vanderbilt in 2 weeks, with Vanderbilt potentially playing for a playoff berth going into that game. You're going to be more prepared mentally for those games. So I think big picture, I don't think you take too much away from this, but at the same time, it is concerning that in game 10, you're having a performance like this that's pretty flat against a team that's not very good. Now, that being said, New Mexico State, to the extent that they really had much to worry about, their defense, it sounds like, had played better than their offense for a lot of the season. Their offense has been okay. They've made some splash plays in the passing game, but their run game's pretty bad. Their pass protection's not been very good for a lot of the year, especially at the tackle position. And they're for all the takeaways they've had on defense, they've had just about as many turnovers themselves offensively. So this team did at least have the capability of causing some problems defensively and did some things to kind of hold Tennessee in check. Now, that being said, Tennessee just, I think, sort of made some mistakes and maybe didn't force the issue as much in this game. Maybe kind of took what was there instead of just doing what they do. And Aguilar was only 17 of 23. It's not like he was all over the place all day. He just had a couple of bad interceptions, and one in particular that was pretty ugly. But the one on the throw to Kitzelman, that was not well placed, and certainly he shouldn't have put the ball in danger like that on that type of throw. But I
put the second interception all on the pressure. I mean, your center gets beat. You got a guy in your face, and when that happens, it's gonna alter how you throw. Some guys end up throwing short. Aguilar's tendency, we've seen it all season, is when he throws off his back foot, flat-footed. That's when the pass, that's when passes will sail on him. And he had Rodarius Jackson going right down the middle, but because he's not able to set his feet because his center gets beat, the ball sails, and it's a pop fly to deep safety. So I don't put that one on him, to be honest.
Right. But that's it obviously it looks bad because you've now had a few of those over the past couple games. Aguilar's thrown 10 picks on the season. That's easily the most that a Josh Heupel quarterback has thrown during his time at Tennessee. So that's not ideal. And he's got to clean that up. And he to his credit, owned up to that after the game and said, "Hey, I've got to be better. I've got to be better in practice." So, he said it starts with me not being at an elite level as a leader, because that's going to trickle down to his teammates. And so give him credit for taking that on. But yeah, this is what we talked about 2 weeks ago after the Oklahoma game. This is kind of the challenge when you do lose that motivation of not having a playoff berth dangling out there as a possibility. That's, players are not always going to show up with the same approach that they should, or that you think they should for every game, but certainly for a game like this. And with that being said, any concerns you might have about Tennessee coming out kind of flat or just not playing all that well in a game like this, how often do we see this throughout college football? I mean, Alabama used to have games like this against FCS teams.
Well, I mean, Texas A&M was down 30-3 South Carolina.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's how it is.
So yeah, it's to your point, it can happen against anybody, but where you kind of come out and just don't play as well as you should. But yeah, I think in games like this, especially where you're a heavy favorite. I mean, Tennessee's nearly a 40-point favorite. Condolences to those who had Tennessee on the spread today, but yeah, I mean, you come out in a game like this and you're not always going to just play with the type of edge you need against this type of opponent. They're just not gonna. You're not gonna be as up, and And you look around at the fact that Arion Carter's sitting out and Josh Josephs is sitting out and Jordan Ross is sitting out. And when guys are using this as a chance to rest, that has to take something away from like the mental focus that you have to have. It's like we're treating this as a practice game, basically. So that has an effect on it. So I think big picture wise, you don't necessarily worry too much about it, but certainly offensively, it is concerning to have this type of game. And New Mexico State, if they were able to take away the downfield passing game, that's the thing to me. Tennessee only had one completion of 20 yards or more today.
A lot of too high safeties today.
And so if you're going to face that against New Mexico State and they can hold you in check, what does that mean other better defenses can do to you? So that, I wonder if not that Tennessee's offense has been shut down really by anybody. I mean, this is the second worst performance they've had of the season. They've had 400 yards against everyone they've played. But it seems like I wonder if the book is out on this Tennessee offense a little bit, and now that teams sort of have it, if it's going to be hard for them to throw the ball down the field, as long as Florida or Vanderbilt or whoever they face is going to try to take things away by playing some deep safeties and just staring them to throw short.
Yeah, positive was probably rushing for 194 yards.
Yeah,
that was they really sort of leaned on the run game. I think quite a bit in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Just 3 of 11 on third down. Didn't run a ton of plays, just 66 plays. So. We'll wrap up with some personnel stuff. No, I don't think they were planning to play Jesse Perry until Wendell Moy gets hurt. So the starting lineup on the offensive line was Lance Hurd at left tackle, Sham Umarov at left guard, Sam Pimpleton at center. It was actually William Satterwhite who was in the game on the 99-yard touchdown drive.
We thought it was a weird spot to have Satterwhite in at center from your own 1-yard line, and it turned out to be fine.
Well, we're idiots. So. Yeah, and then Moy was at right guard. When he went out, they brought in Perry to play there in the second half. And then we'll get to the quarterbacks. Jake Merklinger was it the Simpsons gif where the guy walks in, puts his hat on the
Abe Simpson,
he walked in, put his hat down, threw a couple of bad passes, looped back around, took his hat and left, and then it was George McIntyre in. And look, I know that was a big discussion point during the week. Who should be the first other quarterback in the game, and everybody's half the fan base has moved on to next season already, and what should they do? And we're not going to get to that here, but just in terms of this season, I mean, after Merklinger looked not very good on his couple of snaps, I'm like, at what point, or if you're still coaching in this season mode, which for all intents and purposes these guys are, because like Lane Kiffin said a couple weeks ago. You're coaching for your job every week, right?
Yeah.
Like it's easy to think about coaching for next year, but if you do that and you lose these next 2 games, next year becomes a lot harder, right? A lot more pressure on you. So, but even in the context of this year, it's like, what has Jake Merklinger shown you in games to make you feel confident he's your backup quarterback?
Yeah.
That would have been reason enough to play George McIntyre. And so McIntyre comes in on the next drive, throws a bootleg to Cole Harrison, who ball pops out. DeJuan Morris, recovered it for Tennessee. I think McIntyre took a deep shot to Trey Weary. It might have been Rodarius Jackson, but a little inside. Whoever the receiver was didn't win. That guy was covered pretty well. So, there's that. I don't know what the wind. I'm looking down at the goalpost now. The wind's whipping around pretty good. So it could have been that. He's in there. They get the first down. McIntyre comes in later in the game. I think just a handoff. So it's hard to make much of what's going on there, but certainly those guys can continue to work. They gave those guys a little bit more work during the bye week. So you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. They would have probably liked to give those guys both more work, but in the end, they don't really get the chance to.
Yeah, and like you said, it's fair to question at this point. First of all, I'm not at all surprised that Jake Merklinger was the first guy in the game.
No.
I fully expect that to be the case still, but we kind of talked about earlier in the season that if say Joey Aguilar had gone down and you knew he was going to miss a month or something like that, you probably would have given Jake Merklinger at that time the first shot, but you might have pretty quickly opened it up to both guys once you knew it was a significant injury and given them both the chance, and the best guy would take the job moving forward. Well, now the situation is you're down to 2 games. And if Aguilar gets hurt and someone needs to come in for the 2.5 quarters to finish the game, at this point, based on the body of work we've seen, and it's been very minimal, I'm with you. I don't know that Tennessee's best chance to win wouldn't be to go with the freshman. I mean, the slight edge that Merklinger might have in experience is not all that significant. And if you're just trying to win the game, I don't know that Tennessee wouldn't be better off playing the talented, if inexperienced freshman, even in a tough environment on the road at Florida. If it happened there, I don't know at what point you go ahead and shake things up there. You probably aren't doing anything behind the scenes to rock the boat and upset people. But if that situation presents itself, you would certainly hope that Tennessee wouldn't just by default just go straight to Merklinger and wait through a quarter of shaky play before it would consider making a change to go with McIntyre. That's a tough situation because you've got future considerations to think about. What could this cause a late disruption in Faison Brandon's recruitment if George McIntyre takes the reins and suddenly looks like the quarterback of the future? You got that maybe in the back of your mind. You've also got to worry about just winning the game that's right in front of you, and so and making the team think that you're doing what was needed to win the game. So I don't know what the best situation is for that or how the best way to handle that situation, but it's definitely it's fair to question at this point what they should do if that situation presents itself. And that being said, again, not surprised it was Merklinger today, but just in general, a missed opportunity for Tennessee not to get both of those guys a little more work.
Yeah, and I know a lot of fans are saying, hey, just look at next year, play George, get him ready for next year. Like it works that way in some leagues, like in the NFL, you can tank and get a better draft pick. I don't think it works that way in college football, because if you go out there and play for next season, first of all, what message is that sending to some of your seniors now?
Right.
And then, if you go out there and lose, then your job gets harder in the offseason because you're going to be expected to win more.
Oh, yeah.
And it might be harder to keep guys who might, hey, they might see the direction, this program's not going the right direction. I'm going to leave and go somewhere else. Like you gotta coach for now. I mean, you got to win games now. You can't sort of, coach for the future. So I think we've spent enough time talking about this game. Ryan, you got anything else to add? You want to add any recruiting updates you got after the game?
Yeah, I haven't touched too many guys yet. Tennessee does have an official visitor on campus, Jordan Carter, the 4-star defensive lineman or edge from Georgia. We'll hopefully catch up with him tomorrow after he wraps up his visit. Some unofficial visitors, some pretty noteworthy guys in town for a not so marquee game. So it was a pretty good turnout for Tennessee this weekend. Had some highly ranked 4-stars, even a few 5-stars back on campus. Tristan Keys, the 5-star wide receiver commitment, has been to a few games this season. I think 4 already, and was back in town.
Tristan was here today.
He was. So yeah, to have him back there and really, he kind of has indicated nothing really going on in his recruitment. So that's obviously a good sign for Tennessee. If you didn't see our story earlier today or didn't see it last night, Faison Brandon, the 5-star quarterback commitment that we just kind of indirectly referenced there in the quarterback discussion, he's back on the field after missing really most of his regular season. Came back just in time for the start of the playoffs. So after having a thumb injury that sidelined him for most of the season. So that's positive news there. But yeah, pretty good weekend for Tennessee overall. I think we'll have plenty of updates over the next week or so. But Tennessee definitely had a pretty good turnout this weekend, and definitely I think made the most of it and heard some positive feedback from the guys who were here. Impressed that Tennessee just packed the stadium for a game like this. It's not every place can do that. It was
packed. Shout out to the fans. Yeah. You guys brought great energy. Everybody seemed happy to be here.
Yeah,
and enjoyed the day.
Yeah, it's not an electric environment like you saw for dark mode for Oklahoma and stuff like that, but it's still an environment that impresses people who are seeing it for the first time, and it sends a statement to prospects who are here to see.
Didn't anybody bring up the wave?
They did not. I did not specifically ask, but I should have if they were impressed by the wave going around the stadium in the second half. But yeah, that's pretty good weekend, I think, for Tennessee overall, and we'll certainly have more on that throughout the weekend and in the coming days.
We will have plenty of coverage about this game. There already is plenty of coverage up on the site. Go check it out. We will have more throughout Sunday. We'll see if there's a resolution. You got something?
Well, we'll have details on when the kickoff for the Florida game will be soon. Hopefully.
Yes, it could be any time after 3:30 or night. So we'll see. That'll be up when it's released. We have coverage up now. We will have coverage up on Sunday, our usual Sunday stuff. We'll see if there's any updates with the injuries, any resolution of the Boot Carter situation. We will have all of it. We'll be keeping tabs on all of that into Sunday, and we'll have that covered there. Go check out GoVols247.com. We appreciate you guys listening to this podcast or watching wherever you are.
And I guess it's officially Florida week now.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel the same as it does most years with Florida having an interim coach and going to the swamp the next to last week of November, but it is Florida week.
Who's the lady, the Go-Gator lady? Where is she at? I'm going to look up that video. That's how I start every Florida week. But that week is here. It's weird it is in November. You're right, but it's here, and we will have plenty of coverage of it.
It's weird that Tennessee will probably be favored in the swamp.
The people are they probably don't have high hopes because of 20 years of losing, and I don't blame them. So
understandable.
I think I said we'll have plenty of coverage about 6 times now, so I will just stop saying it, and we will get out of here. on that note, thank you guys for listening, for watching. For Ryan Callahan, I am Patrick Brown. We will talk to you guys here in a few days.